The galactic counts could be adapted for unknown physiologies, drought-resistant seed packages and nutrient concentrates, and, most curiously, large quantities of duct tape and zip ties. When questioned about the last items, Lena had simply said, "Human civilization is held together by these two things." Trust me, by the day of departure, Earth's representatives understood their mission wasn't just about survival. It was about changing the galaxy's perception of humanity. The arrival at the orbital station above Xylos was exactly as humiliating as the team had expected. Massive creatures with chitinous exoskeletons moved through the docking area, while floating tentacled beings communicated through color patterns flashing across their translucent bodies. Towering reptilians with natural armor plating exchanged war stories, and insectoid collectives skittered across walls and ceilings. When a human team stepped from their shuttle, conversation halted briefly before erupting into the alien equivalent of laughter. Look at them. So small and soft. What are those things they're carrying? They need tools to compensate for their weakness. Betting pool starts at 10 minutes for their survival time. Max smiled and waved, ignoring the derision. Hey there, everyone. Great to meet you all. Lena busied herself checking equipment, occasionally glancing up to assess potential threats. Kenji was openly taking notes on a tablet, fascination evident in his expression as he documented every new species. Jia moved slightly apart, accessing the station's public information terminals to gather data on betting odds. A hulking creature with obsidian skin and what appeared to be natural bone blades protruding from its arms shouldered past them, deliberately knocking Mac off balance. Too fragile for Xylos, it growled in broken, standard galactic. Go home, softskins. Mac regained his footing easily. Thanks for the concern, friend. We'll manage. The creature sneered and moved on, but not before Kenji captured detailed scans of its physiology. Fascinating adaptive weaponry, he murmured. Bone structure suggests evolution in high-gravity conditions. Everyone's showing off, Lena observed quietly, displaying dominance behaviors. Nobody's observing the environment or gathering information. Jiara joined them with a pleased expression. The odds against us are astronomical. If we survive even the first phase, the potential return on investment would fund Earth's space program for decades. Did you place a bet on us? Mac asked, eyebrows raised. Of course, Jiara replied smoothly. I'd never ask others to invest in a venture I wouldn't back myself. The deployment to the surface came the following day. Competitors were loaded into individual drop pods and scattered across Xylos' equatorial zone, ensuring each faced different environmental challenges. The human pod slammed into the rusty surface of Xylos with bone-jarring force. As the doors hissed open, the team got their first real taste of the Deathworld's hostility. The air itself seemed to burn with chemical irritants. The horizon wavered under the effects of a distant magnetic storm, and the ground, a mixture of metallic sands and jagged rock formations, shifted subtly beneath their reinforced boots. Atmospheric analysis shows high concentrations of metallic particles and volatile compounds, Kenji reported, checking a handheld device. Breathable, but prolonged exposure will cause respiratory damage. Magnetic storm approaching from the west, Lena added, consulting her own instruments. Estimated arrival in 3 hours, based on current speed. We need shelter, Max said, scanning the landscape, and not out in the open. Unlike their competitors, many of whom had immediately charged off to establish dominance over territory or had begun attacking one another, the human team moved with deliberate caution. They headed toward a series of rock formations in the distance, testing the ground ahead with extendable probes before each step. They had barely covered half a kilometer when the first deaths were broadcast across the competitors' communication channels. A massive reptilian creature had been engulfed by what appeared to be ordinary sand, which had suddenly liquefied and become acidic. Another competitor, a silicon-based life form, had been ensnared by crystalline plants that pierced its supposedly impenetrable exterior. They're not adapting, Kenji observed. They're relying on natural strength and aggression rather than observation and strategy. Their overconfidence is our advantage, Lena replied. They reached the rock formation as the sky darkened with the approaching storm. What initially appeared to be natural caves turned out to be the abandoned burrow of an enormous creature, recent enough that Mac discovered still warm indentations in the packed earth. "Something big lived here," he said, running his hand over claw marks in the stone. "Very big, but not currently present," John noted pragmatically, which makes this optimal temporary shelter. Once inside, they established a systematic approach to survival. Lena set up a perimeter of makeshift sensors using components from their equipment. These would provide early warning of approaching creatures or environmental changes. Kenji took soil and air samples, analyzing them with portable equipment. The soil composition changes approximately every 4.3 hours, he announced after the first day of observations. And the magnetic storms follow a rough 18-hour cycle. Mac, meanwhile, had discovered a source of water, condensation forming on certain mineral deposits within the cave, and had identified the most imminent threats, a pack of predatory organisms that resembled a cross between wolves and scorpions, which had taken to patrolling the area around their shelter. Jia created detailed maps of their surroundings based on drone reconnaissance, marking resources and extreme danger zones. "The most stable ground is north of here, on an elevated plateau," she reported. "It appears to be less affected by the liquefaction events, possibly due to different mineral composition." Back at summit control, Grelvox was becoming increasingly irritated. "Why haven't the humans been eliminated yet?" it demanded. "They aren't doing anything," Exalted One, Sicklath explained. "They're hiding in a cave, taking measurements." "Measurements?" Grelvox's appendages twitched with annoyance. "This is a combat tournament, not a scientific expedition. Viewership is declining. The audience expects blood and displays of strength. Perhaps they will emerge soon," Sicklath suggested hopefully. "Perhaps they need motivation," Grelvox replied ominously. After 3 days of observation and planning, the human team was ready to move to a more strategic location. They had observed the patterns of the shifting environment and the behaviors of local predators. The plateau Jia had identified offered better protection from the magnetic storms and, critically, was near a cluster of the mineral deposits that provided water. "Movement will expose us," Lena warned as they prepared to leave their temporary shelter. "We should expect attacks." The team assembled their equipment, now modified based on their observations. Kenji had discovered that certain local plant spores caused severe disorientation in many of the predatory species. Mac had collected these and, with Lena's help, created rudimentary repellent devices. Their journey to the plateau was tense but calculated. Rather than taking the direct route, they followed a path Jia had mapped that utilized natural cover and avoided known predator territories. When they encountered unavoidable danger, like a section of ground beginning to liquefy, they used their tools and observations to find solutions. In one case, Lena created a bridge of lightweight composite materials reinforced with locals fibers Kenji had determined were acid-resistant. Upon reaching the plateau, they found it was everything they had hoped for, a relatively stable area with defensible positions and nearby resources. The elevation also provided a vital strategic advantage: visibility. "We can see most of the competition zone from here," Mac observed, scanning the horizon with enhanced binoculars, including some of the other competitors. Their base construction began immediately. Unlike the fortress-like structures some competitors had attempted to build, many of which had been destroyed in magnetic storms or consumed by the planet itself, the human team created a flexible, adaptive shelter. The foundation was anchored to the most stable rock formations, but the structure itself could shift and bend with environmental changes rather than resist them. Lena's engineering expertise proved invaluable. She fashioned necessary tools from scavenged materials, including parts from competitor shelters that had failed and the ever-useful duct tape and zip ties. Her most impressive creation was a simple magnetic disruptor that created a small zone of stability during storms. "It's not powerful enough to stop a full storm," she explained, "but it can reduce the intensity enough to keep our shelter intact, and our equipment functioning. Kenji continued his biological studies, identifying edible plants and animals through careful analysis. He also discovered that many of Xylo's most dangerous creatures had predictable patterns tied to the planet's magnetic fluctuations. They're not just responding to the storms, he explained excitedly. They're anticipating them. Their nervous systems are attuned to subtle changes we can barely detect with instruments. This insight allowed the team to develop an early warning system more reliable than their electronic sensors. By monitoring certain species' behaviors, they could predict environmental changes hours in advance. Mac established secure routes for gathering resources and set up simple, but effective defenses, not lethal traps, but deterrents that would redirect potential threats away from their base. His firefighters' experience with managing chaotic situations proved invaluable as they faced the planet's unpredictability. Jia made perhaps the most surprising discovery, one that would ultimately change the course of the competition. While mapping resources, she found unusual crystalline formations that appeared after particularly intense magnetic storms. These crystals stored enormous amounts of energy. They're like batteries, she explained, showing the team a sample. They absorb energy from the magnetic storms and hold it. With the right equipment, we could harness this power. The right equipment being something we don't have, Lena pointed out. Not yet, Jia replied with a calculating smile. But we know who might. The human approach to survival, observation, adaptation, and cooperation was beginning to attract attention. Nearly half the competitors had been eliminated in the first week, but the humans remained, their base growing more sophisticated with each passing day. Their first significant interaction with another species came unexpectedly. Mac, while gathering water, discovered a reptilian competitor trapped in a rapidly liquefying section of ground. The creature, which resembled a humanoid Komodo dragon, hissed and thrashed, which only hastened its sinking. Mac could have left it to die. Many would have argued he should, as one fewer competitor improved their odds. Instead, he called for backup. Using extendable rods and their seemingly endless supply of high-strength cord, the team managed to create a makeshift pulley system. The reptilian creature, which they later learned was called Slith, watched with obvious suspicion as they worked. "Why help?" it asked in halting standard galactic as they finally pulled it free. "Because we could," Mac replied simply. Slith didn't join them, but didn't attack either. It departed with what might have been a gesture of respect, though the team couldn't be certain. 2 days later, they found a bundle of local plants with exceptional nutritional properties outside their shelter. Kenji confirmed they were safe to eat, and the team understood the message, a debt repaid. What they didn't realize was that the entire rescue had been captured by the summit's cameras. For the first time, viewership was increasing, not because of violence, but because of the novelty. The soft-skinned creatures from Earth were surviving through means no one had expected. Grelvox was not pleased. "This is not entertainment," the chairperson fumed. "They hide, they measure, they rescue competitors instead of fighting them. The Deathworld Summit is becoming a mockery." But viewership is up 30%, Sicklath pointed out tentatively. The betting pools are seeing unprecedented activity. Many are placing wagers on how long the humans will survive now. "They should have been eliminated days ago," Grelvox hissed. "This is not survival through strength or superiority. It's cheating." "Perhaps," Sicklath suggested, "we need to increase the challenge." Grelvox's compound eyes gleamed. "Prepare the Xylo Reavers. It's time to remind everyone what the summit is truly about." By the third week, the human team had established a surprisingly comfortable existence. Their shelter had expanded to include separate areas for research, resource processing, and living quarters. They had even managed to cultivate some of the drought-resistant seeds they'd brought, creating a small but productive garden of earth plants unexpectedly suited to Xylo's harsh conditions. More importantly, they had mapped most of the surrounding territory and identified patterns in the planet's seemingly chaotic behavior. They weren't just surviving, they were beginning to thrive. Gia's energy crystals had proven to be a remarkable resource. Lena had created devices to harness their power, providing reliable energy for their equipment and improvements to their magnetic disruptor. The team was gathered for a meal when Kenji's monitoring equipment began signaling an alert. Strange readings, he reported, frowning at the display. The magnetic field is destabilizing, but not in the usual pattern for a storm. Lena checked her own instruments. It's localized, moving this way. Not natural. A competitor? Max suggested. Too organized, Lena replied. This is deliberate disruption. The danger became clear moments later when perimeter sensors reported movement. Lots of movement, approaching from multiple directions. Through binoculars, they could see them, Xylo Reavers. The creatures were nightmare amalgamations of predatory features. The speed of hunting cats, the armored protection of crustaceans, the sensory capabilities of sharks detecting electrical fields, and the venom delivery systems of snakes. Most disturbing was their coordinated movement. They weren't wild animals. They were hunting with terrifying intelligence. Those aren't natural, Kenji stated flatly. They've been modified. The committee, Jiao realized. They're interfering. The Reavers surrounded their plateau, cutting off escape routes. The team watched as the creatures began a systematic approach, using the cover of rock formations and moving in response to signals they couldn't perceive. Options? Lena asked, her voice steady despite the dire situation. Fighting is suicide, Max said. There are at least 30 of them, and they're built to kill. Kenji had been reviewing his research notes with growing excitement. Wait, during my analysis of local fauna, I discovered something interesting about predator-prey relationships here. Many of Xylo's apex predators are highly sensitive to certain frequencies, particularly those generated during magnetic storms. That's why they seek shelter before storms hit, Jia added, catching on quickly. Exactly. And based on brain structure similarities, these Reavers likely share that sensitivity, engineered or not. Lena was already moving toward her workbench. I can modify our magnetic disruptor to generate those specific frequencies at high intensity. It won't permanently stop them, but it might disorient them enough to give us an advantage. As the Reavers closed in, the team executed their hastily formed plan. Lena's modified disruptor began emitting a frequency that humans couldn't hear, but that affected the Reavers immediately. The creatures faltered, some clawing at their sensory organs, others turning aggressive toward each other in confusion. The team used the distraction to implement Phase 2. Mac and Kenji deployed canisters of the disorienting plant spores they'd collected, creating a barrier of biological confusion around their plateau. The combination of sensory overload proved effective. The Reavers' coordinated attack dissolved into chaos. Rather than attempting to kill the creatures, the team strategically herded them, using controlled bursts of the disruptive frequency to drive them toward other competitor territories. The results were predictably devastating as the disoriented but still deadly Reavers encountered the aggressive competitors who relied on direct confrontation. While monitoring the Reavers' retreat, Jia made a discovery that would change everything. One of her drones, mapping the creature's movements, detected an anomaly beneath the surface, a regular geometric pattern inconsistent with natural formation. There's something artificial down there, she reported, showing the team the scan results. Approximately 20 meters below the surface, extending for at least a kilometer in each direction. Some kind of structure? Mac asked. Or technology, Lena suggested, studying the patterns. Those look like power conduits. Kenji's eyes widened with realization. That would explain the unnaturally regular intervals of the magnetic storms and environmental shifts. They're not natural phenomena, they're controlled. By whom? Mac wondered. The committee? Perhaps, Jia replied. Or perhaps something older. Either way, it changes our understanding of this competition entirely. Their investigation had to wait, however, as the aftermath of the Reaver attack brought an unexpected visitor. Slith, the reptilian competitor they had rescued, arrived at their perimeter looking battered but determined. You control the Death Hunters, the reptilian stated, yellow eyes fixed on them. We didn't control them, Mac explained. We redirected them. Same result. Many strong competitors now dead. Slith's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Impressive strategy. The reptilian hesitated, then continued. My people know of what lies beneath. Ancient machines. Control planet, control storms, control life and death. Slith pointed at the ground. Not natural world. Weapon world. A weapon. Kenji asked, fascination overriding caution. The entire planet. Created long ago. For war forgotten. Committee found it. Use it for games. Slith's scales rippled in what might have been discussed. Dishonorable. The revelation confirmed their suspicions, but raised even more questions. If Xylos was artificial, a constructed Deathworld, then the entire premise of the summit was built on deception. Competitors weren't being tested against natural evolutionary superiority, but against a controlled environment manipulated to ensure specific outcomes. We need proof, Lena said after Slith had departed. If we're going to expose this, we need irrefutable evidence. We need access to the subsurface installation, Jia agreed. Using their combined expertise and the information Slith had provided, the team identified a potential access point, a maintenance shaft disguised as a natural fissure, located in a particularly unstable region that competitors generally avoided. The expedition was risky but necessary. Leaving their shelter partially defended, Lena and Kenji made the perilous journey to the access point, while Mac and Jia maintained their base and communications. What they found exceeded their expectations. The maintenance shaft led to an enormous underground facility, ancient but still functional. Alien technology hummed with power, controlling every aspect of Xylo's environment through a complex system of sensors, generators, and mechanical manipulators. This entire planet is a terraforming experiment gone wrong, Kenji theorized as they explored. Or perhaps a weapons test designed to create the most hostile environment possible. Lena was more focused on the control systems. Some of this technology is incredibly advanced, but the interface. She examined a control panel. The interface is newer. Someone has adapted this ancient system for modern use. They downloaded what data they could and took detailed scans of the facility before returning to their base. The evidence was clear. The committee had discovered this ancient system and, rather than reporting it to the Galactic Council as required by interstellar law, had repurposed it for the summit. They're not just testing evolutionary fitness, Jia concluded as they reviewed the findings. They're rigging the competition, manipulating conditions to favor certain physiologies over others. And when we started succeeding despite the odds, Mac added, they unleashed the Reavers directly. The final week of the summit arrived with only 6 competitors remaining. The human team, Slith, and 2 others who had managed to survive through sheer biological resilience. The committee, facing unprecedented viewership but increasingly unable to control the narrative, announced the final challenge. All remaining competitors would be transported to a central arena for direct confrontation. They're changing the rules, Jia observed. They're afraid of what might happen if we're allowed to continue exposing their methods. Then we change the rules too, Lena replied. When the extraction teams arrived to transport them to the final arena, the humans went willingly, but with a plan already in motion. They had prepared data packages containing their evidence and set automated systems to broadcast this information at a specific time, regardless of the competition's outcome. The final arena was a specially constructed dome at Xylo's equator, surrounded by viewing platforms for committee members and special guests. Inside, the environment was even more extreme than what they had previously faced. Rapid temperature fluctuations, gravitational anomalies, and weaponized flora that responded aggressively to movement. Grelvox addressed the remaining competitors through a communication system. You have survived against incredible odds. Now prove your ultimate superiority. Only one team or individual will leave Xylos as champion of the Deathworld Summit. The other competitors immediately positioned themselves for combat, but the human team remained calm. When the signal came to begin, they didn't attack. Instead, Jia stepped forward and spoke clearly. We challenge the validity of this competition. Murmurs ran through the audience as Grelvox responded with obvious irritation. The challenge phase concluded before the summit began. Compete or forfeit. We're not challenging the rules, Kenji clarified. We're challenging the fundamental premise of the summit itself. On cue, the data they had prepared began broadcasting to every communication device in the arena and viewing platforms. Scans of the underground facility, evidence of environmental manipulation, records of the Reaver's deployment, all displayed for the galaxy to see. Xylos is not a natural Deathworld, Lena announced. It's an artificially maintained weapons platform of ancient origin, controlled by the Committee for their own purposes. Chaos erupted among the spectators as Grelvox frantically ordered the broadcast terminated. Too late. The information had already spread across galactic networks. In the confusion, the remaining competitors turned their attention from each other to the committee. Even those who had come seeking glory through combat recognized the deception they had been subjected to. The summit collapsed in scandal. Emergency Council representatives arrived to secure the ancient facility and begin investigations. When the dust settled, the human team found themselves at the center of galactic attention, not as frail creatures who had somehow survived, but as the species that had exposed a centuries-long deception. In the aftermath, the team was summoned before what remained of the committee for the formal conclusion of the summit. Grelvox, now facing serious charges but still officially in charge until the investigation concluded, was forced to acknowledge them as the technical victors. "You have survived the summit," the chairperson stated stiffly. "Though your methods were unconventional. Name your prize, as is tradition." The gallery fell silent, expecting requests for advanced weapons technology or political concessions. Instead, Ja stepped forward with a datapad. "Our terms are simple," she announced. "First, research access to the Xylos control systems, under neutral supervision, to ensure the technology cannot be misused and to study its scientific potential." Grelvox's appendages twitched nervously. "And second, 37% of all broadcast rights and betting revenues from this year's summit," Jia continued, displaying calculations on her datapad. "Based on standard contractual obligations to competition winners and the unprecedented viewership our participation generated." The gallery erupted in astonished conversation. The amount was staggering, enough to fund Earth's entire space program for decades. "This is outrageous," Grelvox protested. "This is business," Jia corrected smoothly, "and considerably less than we could demand through legal channels, given the evidence we've uncovered." With the eyes of the galaxy upon them and legal representatives from the Council already reviewing the evidence of manipulation, the committee had no choice but to agree. As the human team prepared to depart Xylos, they reflected on what their victory meant. They hadn't won through physical strength or natural weapons, but through the very qualities their species had evolved: observation, adaptation, cooperation, and innovation. "Do you think they understand their mistake yet?" Mac asked as their shuttle lifted off from the planet's surface. Lena glanced out the viewport at the committee members watching their departure, their postures radiating defeat and bewilderment. "I think they're beginning to. They invited us expecting fragile creatures who would die for entertainment. Instead, they got humans." Kenji was already documenting their findings, preparing comprehensive reports on Xylos' artificial ecosystem. The scientific community will be analyzing this data for years. Jia was reviewing contract details on her datapad, a satisfied smile on her face. And the economic impact for Earth will be immediate. The technology exchange alone is worth more than most countries' annual budgets. As their shuttle docked with the Earth vessel that would take them home, Mac opened a container and began distributing packages to each team member. "What's this?" Lena asked, examining the foil wrapper. "Snacks," Mac replied with a grin. "I saved them for a special occasion. Seemed appropriate now." As they enjoyed their long-saved treats, the team contemplated the future. Lena was sketching designs based on Xylos technology. Kenji was organizing his notes on the manipulated ecosystem. Jia was calculating investment returns, and Mac was simply enjoying the moment. In the committee's chambers, Grelvox reviewed the final reports with growing dismay. Viewership records shattered, betting revenues unprecedented, and humanity, once dismissed as inconsequential, now positioned as a significant galactic player with access to technology that could transform their development trajectory. The big mistake, Sicklath murmured, using the phrase already spreading across galactic media. We invited humans to the Deathworld summit, Grelvox acknowledged bitterly. But the real mistake was underestimating what makes them dangerous. Not their bodies, but their minds. The galaxy would never make that mistake again.